Emotional healing is very important, and I believe it is going to become even more important in the upcoming years. I hope to help people understand that our emotions matter. They lift us up and they bring us down. They connect us to others and they can keep us distant. While many would say that they are not emotional and emotions are reserved for one gender or another, this is impossible, as emotions affect the physical and energy body of us all, masculine and feminine alike. It is simply how we navigate them that matters. Even the smallest awareness of where our emotions stem from and how they are affecting us can be a drastic change in our individual lives, and as things are energetically layered, how they are affecting us as a society. I often receive collective emotion messages during emotion code sessions and meditation, and I started to share them on my social media recently. I realized that this, instead, would be a nice addition to my podcast. I began to intentionally tap in and ask for messages for the collective on whatever emotion comes through, as I believe this is an important part of healing, not just as individuals, but as a collective. It is in my observation that much of what we go through as individuals is reflective of what we go through as a community, as a nation, and as a globe, and is something that can truly unify us if recognized. But instead of focusing on the negative part of the emotion in a misery loves company sort of way, like we may be used to, we can focus on how to navigate the emotions so we can understand them, move through them, and be non-judgmental when others are doing the same, or, most importantly, don't quite know how. So without further ado, this is a segment of the podcast I am calling Emotional Healing for the Collective. Hi, you guys. My name is Michaela, and thank you so much for joining me on the segment of my podcast I call Emotional Healing for the Collective. Now, this part of the podcast I chose to do sporadically because it just comes with different sessions that I do on individuals. But it also comes when I just feel called to tap in and see what emotion comes up for the collective. So something that I noticed doing emotion release sessions on people is that whenever I'm doing emotional release on people or even on myself, a lot of times there's this overwhelming feeling that this is happening for the collective as well. So that might mean in my apartment complex or in the city or some kind of community or just the global collective. There's, we are very emotional beings and we feed off of each other, and emotions move through us and into others, and things that are coming up for us are more than likely coming up for other people. And so I wanted to do this part of the podcast because I just know that when these things come up for individuals, I know that other people might be harboring them as well. Other people might need that kind of emotion release. And sometimes emotion release doesn't have to be through a full energetic session with an energy healer or, through Reiki or through movement. It can be through just understanding it and talking about it or hearing it from somebody else and having an awareness of it. Just going like, you know what? That's actually kind of what I'm going through, or I never thought about it that way. And being able to have a little bit of a perspective shift on an emotion that you're feeling, or an emotion that you don't even really know you're feeling until you hear it. And you're like, wait a second, like that's what I've been doing. I haven't processed it yet. I didn't realize I was holding on to this. And so for me, working on individuals has allowed not only myself to understand these emotions, it's allowed me to heal through different emotions that I didn't recognize I was feeling. But I just know that there's other people out there that need to hear the same messages that I'm either getting through individual sessions or ones that I'm receiving when I sit down and journal. And I tap into the collective and I ask, what emotion should I receive a message on? What emotion should I speak on? What emotion should I be working through, whether that's for myself or a client that I'm going to have, or just collectively, what do people, what can we talk about? What can we work through? What can we tap in and try to process as a community or as a whole? So I started this segment. I've only had one other episode out, and I decided to do one today because this one's been sitting in my journal for a minute, and for whatever reason, it's been kind of itching at me. So I was like, I think I'm going to talk about that today. I'm not going to actually do a new one. I'm going to pull one out that's been sitting in there because I just know that it's a loaded emotion. It's a deep-seated emotion. It's a very challenging emotion to work through that can take many, many years. And I just thought, you know what? Let's get into it. Let's pull it up and see what comes up. So I have the channeled message that came through on an individual session. And then I also have some notes that kind of popped up for me as I was reading through it. And it's really interesting. So let's just start because it's super interesting. So the emotion that I want to talk about is blame. Okay, blame as an emotion. Okay, I think a lot of people don't really recognize what a lot of emotions are. When we talk about emotions, I think we can just immediately think of being sad, happy, frustrated, annoyed. It's like a version of sad or happy when we think of emotions, right? When we think of somebody crying, we think they're emotional. When we think somebody's yelling at us, that means they're emotional. But emotions have there's a spectrum of emotions, and there are so many that when they pop up, you're like, that's an emotion. And blame is very much an emotion. And it's something that is heavy. It's something that will fester. It's something that will create a lot of physical issues, like illnesses, if it's not resolved. It's complex. It's not as easy as happy or sad. You can be happy or sad because of blame. A lot of emotions can create other emotions. There's a domino effect a lot of times, and blame is definitely one of them. I want to give you the channeled message I received that day, and then we'll kind of go into a little bit more of how we can understand blame and hopefully move through it in a really healthy way. So the channeled message around blame. There could always be someone to blame. Freedom is when you can only blame yourself. To be bound by blame is to be emotionally shackled. To release blame of others is to release these shackles. Self-awareness releases these binds. Be free. Remove blame, remove your shackles. Allow yourself to be free. So this is kind of interesting. Oh, I just got chills. Okay. This is how I know that it's collective, because something that runs through me like that is like, it's heavy, and it's somebody else felt it. And this is, again, blame is a lot. Blame is really heavy. It's complicated. Not all of us want to admit that we're blaming other people for our problems. Not all of us want to admit that we're blaming ourselves for things that we shouldn't blame ourselves for. Blame, it sits in different parts of our body. Let me look and see where blame shows up in the body. Let's see. Hold on one second. I'm just going to pull this up really quickly. Blame, blah, 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 blah. Blame shows up in the kidneys and in the bladder, which is so interesting. But that's where it shows up, the kidneys or the bladder. I'll get into what that means in a second. But emotions show up in the body in different ways. They can start in the in different organs. In Eastern medicine, they believe that emotions arise from specific organs in the body. But from what I've understood, working on other people and working on myself, from what I've understood is that emotions get lodged in our energy body, and they end up affecting different parts of our physical body. And they typically will they can affect where they get lodged, but then they can also, there's a specific area that will be either targeted by it or affected by it by the way that we cope. So we cope in such a way for our emotions that our coping mechanisms a lot of times will affect those parts of the body. So it's interesting that it says the kidneys, because that could be a coping mechanism thing too. Certain things that we do, or substances that we use, or foods that we consume can heavily affect the kidneys. And so that's kind of how that links together. So I should have looked that up before I jumped on here, but it just made me think of it. So, but we can come back to that in a second. Blame, this whole channeled message had me really thinking about things. It had me really, I understand it when I received it, because I've been through situations where I had to understand that in order to sort of be free of a lot of things that I was going through, or pain that I was feeling, emotional pain, I needed to let go of of blaming specific people for certain things. Like, I needed to stop it. I needed to look back and go, you know what, this is causing me more pain and suffering than that person. That person might not even know that I'm still thinking about them. That person might not even recognize how much damage that they, quote, they did. And so, seething and blaming other people for the issues that I was feeling at the time, or the situation I was in. Maybe I was in a certain life situation that I could easily look back and blame someone else for. I could be like, well, if so-and-so hadn't done this to me, then I wouldn't be here. And if so-and-so hadn't done this, then I wouldn't have said that. And you know what I mean? You can always go backwards and end up finding the thing that you want to blame in order to make yourself feel better, in order to justify what's going on in your life, in order to make sense of what's going on in your life. But when we're putting that energy into blaming someone else, even if that person did, launch you into the place that you are, even if there is reason to blame that person, the energy that we put into blaming someone else it ends up being severely wasted energy. Like, it is, because it can be a lot. It takes a lot of energy to constantly remember, to think about, to feel about, to get enraged about, or be crying about. That is so much energy. And that energy can be put forth into healing. It can be put forth into processing. It can be put forth into figuring out what to do next, as opposed to holding on to the past of why you might be here. This is where the perspective shift is so important. And it's so important in order to begin the healing process. And something that it's so wild to think of, like, be free from others and these binds of blame, because it keeps you connected to the other person. And I don't know if anybody understands about energetic binds or cords, but if you're constantly thinking of somebody, if you're constantly rewinding and going back and just being sad or upset or angry over this person that launched you into where you are, and you're going backwards and blaming over and over and over again, you're still connected to that. Like, that is a bind right there. That's a connection. That's a cord. And so many of us need to cut cords from people from our past, and especially those who have hurt us. And so again, this doesn't mean that you just stop, that you just you don't have to forgive. You don't have to, that forgiveness comes in different forms at different times, but you don't have to be connected. You don't have to be connected to in the form of blame, because it's an emotional connection. And if you really want to be free of that pain, you can start by disconnecting that blame. And again, it doesn't mean that you're okay with whatever happened. It doesn't mean that it didn't happen, because there's a lot of times that when we actually do the healing work, we recognize that, oh, maybe I was a part of the problem. Maybe it wasn't always, I was blaming them for so long and I didn't realize that they did this because of this. And then that came to me and I took it wrong because of where I was. And if you kind of go backwards, sometimes when you start to do the healing process, a lot of times you can release the blame because you recognize that, maybe your view of the situation at the time was a little skewed. And so this is why tapping into blame and releasing blame and working on blame is so important, because it is so important for the path of healing. Like, blame to me is like and this has happened. Oh, I just got the chills again. This has happened to me when I've released this emotion on people, is that it feels like a wall begins to come down. Like, a lot of times we can build walls around our hearts, and blame is part of that wall. It's very much a part of that wall. And I think when we are still in a place of blaming and just really holding on to, I can't get over this because he or she did this to me. And when we are holding on to that, it's a wall. Blame is a very clear wall that is not going to let you pass into the place of healing that you need to be. So if you can think of blame as this tangible wall and sort of look at it like, look, I have been blaming this person. And again, they probably did it. They probably did these horrible things. And it's hard to let it go, because if they didn't do this, I wouldn't be going through this, and however that trajects. But if I don't work through this, if I don't release those shackles of blame, if I don't cut that cord, this wall will never come down, and I will never be able to get here and then here, and I'm never going to be able to move forward. So I think when that says that you're bound by these shackles of blame, that's what it is. Blame holds you back. It holds you back. And whether you envision it as reins being pulled back so that you can't move forward, or a wall that's being built in front of you because we put up these emotional walls, and blame is a strong wall. It is a strong wall. It will, and again, it's a lot of times it's protection. These emotions and these walls that we build up, they're protectors of sorts. And so sometimes when we're hitting these walls and we, maybe we do feel like we're healing, but then there's still this thing in our brains and our subconscious or in our emotional bodies that's like, I can't let this go because I'm just so angry at this person for doing this to me. Like they caused me this pain, or they put me in this situation and now my life is shit because da 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 da, and I can't. And you're always going back and saying you're blaming this person for your current situation. And it's really challenging to let that go, because that can become it can almost become kind of like part of your identity in a way, where you're like, I can't let this go, because how can I release that when this person caused me to be here? And if that person didn't do this, I wouldn't be here. I would be in a better place without that person. And this is why blame is so complex, and it can be really challenging to work through, because it's almost like letting someone off the hook, right? And I think I wrote about this in my notes. Yeah, it's almost like letting somebody off the hook. It's almost like that weird, just forgive and move on. And it's like, yeah, like that's a thing too. Forgiveness is for the self, right? Not for the other person, because it's that same kind of thing. It's allowing you to break that wall down. It's allowing you to cut that rein so that you can move forward, because it is for you. It is 100% for you. Sitting back and going backwards and blaming and blaming and blaming, the energy is just being it's just being recycled. It's not going into flow. And so it's just being recycled energy, and it's not getting you anywhere. And it really ends up not serving a purpose because it's just spinning. And so for a while you can be there. For a while it makes sense. It's human nature you have to own it. You have to honor when somebody does something to you. You don't just be like, oh, I need to move forward. Like people need to be held accountable for what they do 100%. But there's also the time and the place where you finally go, I need to work through this. I need to work through it so that I can cut the cords, I can break through this wall, and I can move to a place of safety, security, ownership, power. Like you can't, sitting in blame, it takes away your power. It really does. And I think that can be a little bit distorted for some people, because I think a lot of people who are in, I don't use this word lightly, because I think that it can be taken in the wrong way, but victim mindset, it's just like the only way to really describe it that clicks for people. And when you end up sitting in victim mindset, and that victim mindset is the blaming others, okay? It's important to know that you are allowed to do that, because so many of us have been victims of certain things, and that person should be held accountable. They should be treated as such. And like, you did this, it created this, and you need to own that. However, that I need to own it as well in order to move on. So there's two things happening. You're like, this person needs to work through what they did to you on their own time, unfortunately, and you need to work through what they've done to you and move forward. So there's multiple layers of healing here. It's not just about us. And this is why it's a collective, right? Because we all affect each other on some levels. And especially when it comes to blame, because there's typically two parties involved. If you are feeling like you need to blame something for somebody, then there's somebody else involved. How they work with that, again, is like on them. And if maybe you're in a relationship and you need to work on it together, maybe you're working through a hardship in your relationship, and you have every right at one point in time to blame that person for whatever they put you through. And that person has every right to have a chance to apologize, explain themselves. That's what working things out is when you're in a relationship. If the relationship has moved on and you're completely separate, then that's when you need to figure out how to cut that cord, how to break down that wall, and how to move forward for yourself, period. And blame is such a heavy emotion, and a lot of us don't want to let it go. A lot of us do not want to drop that wall, because we're like, no, like, this person did this to me. And until that person gives me an apology, an explanation, a settlement, whatever it may be, like, you're not going to let it go. But unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. And I think a lot of us get into those situations where we don't get that closure. I mean, I know I had a relationship that ended pretty dramatically, and I didn't really get to have the closure that I wanted. I didn't get the apology. I didn't get the, and it's hard to move on from that, because it has you spiraling in a way. And I know it did me. I mean, it changed my whole entire existence. It changed where I lived. It changed, my whole outlook on life. Okay, so that was really weird. My whole computer just went down. Like, the whole system just went black. So I had to get up on here and get back to where I was. And I'm so grateful. Thank you, angels and all the things, for not losing that entire program, because I was so worried that it was going to be gone, but it is still here. So I will try to go back to where I was. Sorry if this is such a weird middle of the podcast, but it crashed, and I'm like, I don't want to start over. I'm just going to keep going. So what I was talking about before, being in that blaming mindset, I was in it in many different times in my life. And honestly, I could sit and look back on things and pick out people to blame for a lot of things that I went through now. I could blame my parents for a lot of things. I could blame certain relationships I was in, my siblings, friends, strangers that, changed the trajectory of the day. You never really know, but we're always interacting with people, and we can stay in blame and blame other people for what we are going through very easily, because that's kind of what happens in human connections and human relationships, where, things happen, and how we deal with it, is what really matters. But sitting in that blame, even though it might be warranted, I know a lot of people are going to go, I am not going to take accountability for something that I didn't do. And that is not what I'm saying that you should do. Again, it can be warranted, but it hopefully can be short-lived. Hopefully it can be something that you can move through and go, yes, this happened. I might not get closure. I might not get an apology. This still might be causing me pain and suffering. Maybe I'm in financial troubles because of it. You never really know what can happen because of somebody else's actions, and they can have long-term effects on people. And this goes for people who are the ones doing the certain things. Like if you're doing things that create harm to people, whether it's emotionally, mentally, physically, or financially, you don't really know how long that can affect someone because of this reason, because emotions, they sit with us, and because it can take so long to really work through something like blame. Again, this can be a very deep-seated emotion, and something that can linger for a very, very, very long time. I mean, this is the type of emotion that you sit in therapy and you try to get to the root. It is a root emotion. It's like crying, spinning out, being, the way you respond in the outer world might be the symptoms of something, and something that maybe you go into therapy with, and you're like, I'm upset all the time. I'm resentful. I'm frustrated. I'm angry. I'm acting out, or maybe you're sad all the time. You're depressed. You're coping in unhealthy ways. And eventually you want, through these therapies, whichever one you choose, eventually you want to get to the root of that issue. And a lot of times it's blame, and you have to find out who are you blaming? Like where does this come from? And, are you blaming yourself? Because self-blame, it can be very, very heavy and very real. And again, is that warranted? Are you putting the blame on yourself so that you don't blame somebody else? Are you misplacing blame? Because a lot of us do that as well, where we are so focused on blaming someone else that we don't take accountability, or the other way around, where we are constantly blaming ourselves and putting ourselves into that shame and guilt. Again, these are the root emotions, and we are not actually placing the blame on who it should be on. You're saying you're blaming yourself, but it's like if somebody else caused you this pain, you need to release that blame from yourself, and you need to make sure it goes where it needs to go. You need to understand, but then you also need to not linger on that either and be able to move on. Again, blame is complex. It creates walls, it creates these reins, and you have got to figure out a way to release the blame, whether it's on somebody else or on yourself, so that you can literally be free. Because, like this channeled message said, awareness releases these binds. And whether that's self-awareness of understanding of what you need to work through, or becoming aware of, wait, this is not my issue, this is something else, and I need to release that so that I can be free. And back to the victim mindset thing, this is kind of a lot of where it stems from. People who stay in victim mindset a lot of times are harboring a lot of blame, and it's hard for them to let go. And it's again, this is it's complex, and I don't want people to take things wrong, because again, there's a time there, we want to make sure that we're honoring ourselves if something has happened to us, and we do want to make sure that we are heard and seen when we are a victim of something. But we also need to do our best to try to work through to get on the other side of victim mindset, other side of being the victim, which, and the other side is opportunity. The other side is optimism. The other side is solutions to all of the hurdles that might have been created due to whatever happened to us to put us into a victim state. And we want to work on getting through that. And one of the ways to work through that is to, number one, figure out where the blame, where we're feeling it, where we're putting it, and make sure that we're putting it where it needs to be. We need to honor where it needs to be. If we're putting it on ourselves, does it need to be there? Does it need to be somewhere else? Or if it's out there, do we need to work through it and let it go? Or maybe it's out there and a little bit needs to come back to us, and we need to work through that with that self-awareness. I know that's something that I've had to do in my past, where I was always blaming because I didn't want to admit that I was doing something not that great. Like, I've definitely been the manipulator. I have definitely been the not nice person. I have definitely caused problems in my day. And a lot of times it's easier to blame somebody else instead of taking accountability. So there's that part too. You know, every single person is different. Every scenario is different. Everybody's life is different. And blame is something that we're going to deal with all the time. Like, even in small little arguments that you're going to have with your significant other, just of who didn't take out the trash and who did, who said they were going to, who didn't. Well, I blame you because the trash man didn't come, blah, 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 blah. Like, you can get into blame like real easy. But the blame that I'm talking about, this collective healing from blame, is the deep one, is the deep rooted blame. And it's something that eventually will come out in very unhealthy ways. And, you know, something I wrote a note here on the victim mindset thing. Victim mindset is something that I think needs to be talked about more. I think that even just saying the word like victim mindset, or if you feel like, if somebody tells you like you don't want to be in victim mindset anymore, that can be a trigger in itself. That can be like, you don't get to tell me how to feel. Like, you don't know what I've been through. It can really put up that wall of defense, where it's something that I think we really need to work on understanding the timing of healing from that, because it's something that, again, if we don't work through it, it only continues to affect us. You know, it's like there's only so much time, I think, that eventually, you know, it's like that wall that gets put up. Eventually, what happens with walls that we put up, especially emotional ones, is like the wall comes up to protect. That's what it's there for. And it does an amazing job of doing it. And it creates defenses that are a lot of times absolutely necessary. They are necessary defenses. And, you know, we need to make sure that we're protecting our hearts, we're protecting our soul, we're protecting our mental health. You know, we put these walls up, and they're so needed, 100%. But eventually the wall gets so thick and so high and so heavy that it's no longer protecting us. It's actually not letting us be, it's imprisoning us. So we end up with this wall of protection that went from protection to imprisonment. And we need to, there comes a point where we need to recognize what that line is, what that point is, and go, okay, I no longer need to be protected. I want to work on bringing this wall down because I don't want to be a prison inside of this anymore. And I think, and that line, that the heaviness and the height of that wall is going to be different for everybody. Like, it's not on any one of us to say, okay, you only get this much time to feel protected, and then now it's time. Like, the timing for all of these healing processes is different for every single person. But I think the recognizing of, okay, the wall that I've been putting up to protect me, or that my energy has been naturally putting up to protect me, is no longer protecting me anymore. It's keeping me out. It's keeping me, or not out, I guess, it's keeping me in. And it's not allowing my heart to open anymore. It's not allowing my vision. Your vision gets tunnel vision. You're not allowed to see things differently anymore because this wall is up there. And a lot of times what's inside that wall is blame. and along with so many other emotions. And this is why emotion release is so important. This is why I love to do it. And this is why I think that it's important for us to understand our emotions and the walls that can be built because of these energies. And again, it's an energetic wall that is there, people know are there, you can feel it. And eventually there comes a point that you say to yourself, okay, I want to break free from this wall. I want to let go of these reins. I don't want to be tied down anymore, because yes, at one point in time, this made sense, and I have fought the good fight, and I'm defending myself, and my wall is strong, my wall is heavy, and I'm proud of that because I've been through it and I've stuck by it, and that wall has protected me, and it's hardened my heart, it's toughened me, it's done all these things. But eventually there comes a time where you really have to understand that in order for that wall to come down, you've got to release certain types of emotions, and you got to get to those root emotions. And a lot of times blame is one of them. The note that I wrote about victim mindset, I put the quote, "Life is happening for you and not to you," is a bit loaded sometimes. We don't want to excuse or dismiss the things that happened to us, but we need to drop the wall of blame in order to allow us to move into where the situation can happen for us. So the reason why that came up for me when I was writing about it was because you hear that all the time, right? You hear that on the kind of like whimsical, like the people who have already been through a lot of things, their perception is that life is happening for you. The situations are happening for you. And when bad things are happening, when good things are happening, it doesn't matter what's happening. It's all happening for you, right? They want to really try to help people understand that life is happening for us. Well, when we are going through really, really, really hard times, and I'm talking hard times, like some of the hardest, darkest shit you can think of, it's really hard to look around and go, this is happening for me. Like, it's really hard. It's like, come on, like that piece of advice doesn't land well. You know what I'm saying? And when I wrote about this, I think that for me, there is a time in life where life is happening to you. I think when I was younger, going through really hard shit, like things were happening to me, and I had to respond in certain ways, the only ways I knew how. But those situations were also building my resilience. They were building my intelligence. They were building my bullshit meter reading. Like they were really actually building my intuition. They were really sort of shaping certain things, and they were happening to me. And I could, and so if somebody came to me and said, honey, this is happening for you, I'd be like, no, go away. But however, it wasn't until I finally broke down my walls, I went through a specific, healing processes, that I was able to envision, or not even envision, but I was able to go back to certain times in my life and go, you know what? That did happen for me. I couldn't see it then. That wasn't true at that time to me. Like it wasn't true at the time, but it became true later. And I think that, helping people understand that what they know about themselves at the time is usually true at the time. And when you work through different things, then that's how you sort of like, you unwind, and you sort of start to see the gray areas in your black and white story. And then you can go, you know what? That did happen for me. It was not okay at the time. I am still not happy about it. But now that I've worked through it and I've gotten to be who I am, and maybe my story is helping others, and maybe I've built this amazing empire, or just resilience, and I'm, giving that to my children or to my peers or whatever it may be, then you can see, then you have the perspective shift. Then it becomes there's a moment in time where you can say, okay, that happened for me. Because if it didn't happen then I wouldn't be here now. And then the blame shifts a little bit. Then you go, you know what? Because there is a time, like when I was in my blame game of the guy that really changed my life, there was anger there. There was a lot of anger that came with that blame. But later in life, I was happy about it. I was like, wow, I'm actually really glad this happened, because it was so clear later on, many years later, so clear as to why. The why came out so much later. And, we want that, right? Especially when we're in a blame or victim mindset. We want to know the why. We're like, why are you doing this? Why did this happen? Why am I here? Why? And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, or maybe good news if you're still waiting. Sometimes the why comes so much later, and you have to move through it. You have to sort of, drop that wall of blame and go, you know what? I can't, this is only holding me back. This is only building a wall that's keeping me imprisoned. And this is what I think that channeled message really meant, is that like, eventually you're going to have to release those shackles. You're going to have to release that wall that allows you to be free, because it's only holding you back. And even though it started out as a protective barrier and was totally warranted, eventually you have to figure out a way to recognize that it is keeping you from other beautiful things that you can't even fathom, because you can't see it, because you have a tunnel vision. Your perspective it can't be changed because the walls are so thick and dark. And again, if this is an emotion that can take time to work through. It's not something that all of a sudden you're gonna, have, you could. A lot of people have aha moments, awakening moments where they go, wow, like I have been seething on this for so long, and what is it? It's just keeping me. Life is going on. Their life is going on. It's keeping me. It's really holding me back. And eventually, you go, okay, I need to really let this go. And how you work through that is up to you. It's like whether you talk about it, whether you dance about it, or you journal about it. However you work through your emotions, you have to understand that blame is a very real one. It's a root that you need to find. So if you are sitting there, journaling over the same thing over and over again, or spinning over the same thing over and over again, that you're like, why can I not move on from this? Well, maybe blame is something that you have to work through. And it's a challenging one, because it makes you look in the mirror. It makes you go, am I to blame? Is he to blame? Is she to blame? Who's to blame? What's going on? And if you are a person who's just blaming everybody else for your problems, and your problems don't change, that's a good identifier that maybe it's not them. That maybe somewhere along the line somebody got you into this situation, but now it's up to you to get yourself out. And now you're just blaming other people for keeping you there. Like, that's something that you'll see a lot of people do. And again, this is going to be triggering for some. A lot of people aren't going to want to hear it. It's a challenging emotion to work through, because nobody wants to admit that they've been blaming everybody else for their problems. That's, again, that victim mindset where it's like, how much of this is me, owning what happened to me, but then also not willing to work through it in order to get past it, so that I can let that go, so that I can release myself, because it is a shackle, it is reins, it is an imprisonment when you are stuck inside something that you can't figure out a way out of. And there's so many emotions that'll be involved. It's not just blame, but again, blame is typically a root cause, and you have to figure out where the blame needs to go, honor it, own it, and then get rid of it and be done. I'm not blaming this on you. I gotta go. I gotta be done with this, because all it is doing is bringing me down into a place that I no longer want to be. So I think that working with blame should be, you need to be gentle with yourself when you're working through blame, because I think it can bring up a lot. And I think especially as a collective emotion, kind of the way that I'm seeing it right now is there's a lot of blame out there right now. And it can go in so many directions. And I think that's why I've been kind of itching to talk about it, because there's so much right now that's outward, right? We want it, everything is outward. Like, they're doing this, she said this, he's doing this. And what that does, blame allows us to keep everything outwards, right? It keeps everything out. As long as, well, my neighbor said this and she said that and he posted this on Facebook and that governor did this and that person did that, and politics and what you want to, like, you name the topic, blame can be involved. And what blame does is it keeps everything outwards. It keeps everything, like, if it's out there, then I don't have to I don't have to work on myself. They have to work on themselves. He shouldn't have said that. It's like, it really there's a separation there. And so when we're having this collective of emotion of blame, I think it stops us from having the hard conversations that we need to have in order to move forward. So again, it can start small. You're blaming your neighbor because the trash can did this and this or whatever, and it keeps you at head to head with each other, instead of saying, look, hey man, like, sorry about the trash can situation the other day, like, let's move on, and it can start with it can be something as simple as that causes the friction, but then it can also be really heavy stuff. But that blame, it keeps us from communicating. It keeps this out and this in, and or it keeps a lot of stuff in. If we're doing the self-blaming, it keeps a lot of it in and we don't put it out. We don't say, like, I'm blaming myself, so that the other person can say, please don't blame yourself. Like, I have a hand in that too. Blame keeps the walls up around everybody. It really does. And if we don't start having conversations about not just who's to blame, but how can we move past it, then those walls are going to continue to stay up, because blame, again, it's a heavy one. It's complex. And when it comes up for people, it typically brings up like a big release. And it's, again, I mean, it can be ancestral. It can go deep rooted. Like, mom can blame grandma and grandma can blame her grandma. Like, when you get into blame, there's a lot that can be involved. It doesn't just have to be the tedious, he said, she said. It can be like deep seated and rooted. Again, it's a root emotion. So blame is interesting. So I think I'm going to end it there. So again, sorry about the weird pause in the middle. My whole system went black. So I apologize for that, but I hope you guys sort of understand what I'm talking about when it comes to these complex emotions and why I want to talk about them, because I just think that understanding our emotions and understanding the nuance of them, and how crying isn't just crying, and frustration isn't just frustration, and anger isn't just anger. There are so many emotions that can be bottled up and affect the body in different ways. Again, I talked a little bit about how they can affect the organs and the systems, but emotion can have us coping in so many different ways, to where all of a sudden maybe we overeat or overconsume substances. It causes a lot of addiction. These emotions that we don't move through, if we don't move through them in a healthy way, it can lead to unhealthy things in the body, whether it's through the coping mechanisms or just the stress on the body in general. Because if we are harboring these emotions, they're negative charges and they can be very heavy. And the longer we sit with them, the heavier they become. And so, if it's something that is going on, all of a sudden, like, again, this emotion affects the kidneys. So all of a sudden, if you've been having this self-blame, or in this emotion of blame has been affecting you in whatever way, if you don't figure that out, if you don't work through it, there's a chance that you might get kidney stones. You might be 17 years old with kidney stones. And it's like, well, why, where is this coming from? Like, I don't drink anything crazy. I don't do whatever. Well, it's like, what emotion could you be harboring that could be giving you these kidney stones? And a lot of times it's going to be these specific emotions that affect the kidneys. So it's interesting when you get into that, because there's been people that I've worked on, and when I tell them the organ that they affect, they're like, oh my gosh, like I had my gallbladder out last year, or I have trouble breathing because of my this or what. And I'm like, yeah, it's because this, and they can't figure out what it is. If people can't figure out what's going on with you in your body, there's a good chance it's emotional. So this is why I love the work that I do, because it doesn't just help release trauma and emotion, but it can really help you heal in different parts of the body that might not be able to heal. So again, thank you so much for joining on this podcast, you guys. This one, I'm going to try to do it more, but my energy for stuff like this ebbs and flows. But I will try to do another one soon. I'm going to just pick another one that I'm just going to channel through. And if there's one that you all want to talk about, please comment on any of the platforms this is posted on. Or if you are interested in an emotion release session, I will put my email and information down below. You can always reach out to me to get a trial session if you'd like, because this work is very interesting and, in my opinion, works very well. And it brings up a lot. And I want to help people in the best way that I know how. And this is something that I know how. So thank you so much for listening, you guys. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, please reach out to me on any of my platforms. And I hope to see you guys soon. And next time, I think I'll be a little more prepared, and hopefully my computer won't crash in the middle of everything. So I'm still figuring out this system, and I swear every time I have something go wrong, but I'm staying positive and I'm staying with the course, and I'm going to figure it out. So thank you so much for joining, you guys. And as always, have a wonderful and mindful day. Take care. Thank you so much for joining me for Emotional Healing for the Collective on Mindful Guidance. If you are interested in learning more about the Emotion Code, or would like to schedule a session, please feel free to email me at Michaela@balancefitnesswellness.com. These sessions can be done over the phone or Zoom. You can also check out my website, balancefitnessandwellness.com, for all my other ongoing coaching programs like How to Win the War on Your Health and You Are Energy. If you are in need of home cleaning and cleansing due to bouts of depression, stress, or even hoarding, this is also something that I do, as it is just another form of energy healing. Please reach out for more info. Supporting my podcast is so helpful to me, so please like and subscribe on either Spotify or YouTube, and share the episodes that you think may help someone else. As always, thank you for being here. Until next time.